Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to sit down and talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week we have Cameron Abbott back. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going on, nerds?
What is going on? Lots to talk about this week in a variety of nerdy subjects. Before we get to any of that, a little bit of housekeeping. If you haven't caught it already, we're in year 2 here over at That Nerdy Site, which means we launched a couple new shows, including That Conversational Podcast, which has a couple episodes out now. One where Cameron sat down to talk with Ian Preschel about One Piece, and then another episode that went live this last weekend with Logan sitting down to talk with Tom Hopkins about the Premier League, kind of a follow up to their previous special edition version of That Nerdy Site show because we didn't have that conversational podcast like designed around that yet. That conversational podcast is basically like one-on-one shows where we here at That Nerdy Site, some member from our team sits down with kind of an outside guest talking about a topic that is near and dear to their heart, kind of just, yeah, really focused, more long form, just conversation out as opposed to like the catch all stuff that maybe something like this show is. We also have That Retro Gaming Show, which is a Let's Play series that I've been putting up on YouTube, which is currently just me sitting down and playing through the games of the NES Classic, with potential future episodes focusing on the SNES Classic or the Genesis Classic or even the PlayStation Classic, all the classic little mini consoles that have been going out in recent years. Basically, it's a chance for me to hop back into kind of gaming of yore. Either games that I've played and have fond memories of that I share, like in the Super Mario Brothers episode, or games that I've never touched before, like Ice Climber. And you just kind of get to see me on the struggle bus of that game for 10 or so minutes, I think. So you can check out those episodes over on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/thatnerdysite. If you do like what you hear as far as the podcast goes here, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, and share the podcast everywhere you can. If you're feeling extra generous, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, just like our wonderful, wonderful Patreon community does each and every month. So let's dive right on in. Probably the biggest thing that has been on both of our minds this week, Cam, outside of the normal pop culture nerdosphere, has of course been the U.S. election here, which happened on Tuesday, and then finally got a victor called on Saturday, yesterday, as we were recording this, 2 days ago. If you're listening to this the day this episode goes live, and fortunately, I think for both of us and for many people around this country, Joe Biden has been elected our next president. So, what was this week like for you, Cam?
So here's the thing. There's three things that I don't usually talk about on, there's been a few exceptions to this for one of them, but there's three things that I usually don't talk about on podcasts because I know it doesn't make for good podcast conversation. Um, Unless it's like where we've been at in the last couple weeks for politics. Politics is one of them. The second thing that I don't talk about usually on podcasts is data analytics. And the third thing I don't talk about is like my knowledge of like sub-regional voting, like voting habits. Um, I started paying attention to politics pretty closely when I was like 7 or 8, um, before Bill Clinton's actual impeachment trial and after the House had brought in charges up against him, because the world kind of went into an like a topsy turvy time when Bill Clinton was charged with impeachment back in 1997, 1998. Um, and I was like, who's this president guy everybody keeps talking about? And so I got super into the weeds, as you would imagine. Just imagine me, but smaller, weighing a lot less. And I was hooked on like the nerdy side of politics from like day one. Um, I'm very lucky. I got a lot of my like moralistic ideological politics side of my life out from like I got that out of the way because I was so young, so I didn't have to waste my time as a young adult being an idiot when it comes to politics.
I mean,
Especially because,
I did.
yeah,
I wasted some of my time as a young adult being an idiot about politics. I think I've joked on podcasts before. I enrolled in the Teenage Republicans club at my high school, but it was pretty much only to like chase a girl that was in there.
yeah,
And then like almost immediately after high school, and that's like I grew up in a Republican family. But yeah, as soon as
same.
I kind of got into
Well,
college,
not true.
I started leaning much more liberal, and especially in recent years, I've been getting a lot more like I've historically been more centrist, but left leaning, and now I'm even getting more and more like progressive.
Yeah, I think when it's interesting you brought that up, and I'll touch back on it in a moment. But like, I grew up in a split political home, so my dad's a Republican, my mom's a Democrat. Um, my dad is from Nevada. He's from Vegas. He is a like desert, rural looking, like numbers should add up kind of Republican. So like a by the book, button up kind of Republican guy kind of guy when it comes to politics, especially. But like I also come from like a very religious family. And so like my dad sees some issues not as political issues, but as like moral issues to take a stand on, which has definitely brought the two of us into conflict in the past. Uh, Granted, like there's been a lot that's happened in the last like probably say 10 years to shift my dad in a lot of different ways. Him and my mom moving to California and their next door neighbors being a gay married couple definitely like changed things for my dad. Like as far as like his perception, like when the person that you think is this other is just your next door neighbor, like that changes things. That's one thing, one minor thing, but like anyway. But my mom's from New York. My mom's from Long Island. She's a Long Island Democrat, which means um, her liberal leanings come from a place of like sympathy and empathy, and that's one thing that she struggled with as a teenager. I did not have political empathy for the downtrodden. I was definitely a like pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Republicans aren't conservative enough, kind of like teenager, which you know, there's a lot that can go into that.
Hmm.
But kind of walking away from that over to what happened is same thing that happens to a lot of young people who think they're conservative. You meet people. You meet people. I'm looking off to like the side of my laptop and forgetting that I'm on camera.
It's
Uh,
it's all right. It like I've been looking at it. Like, I mean, because I just naturally am looking down at the video on the thing.
yeah.
So I was just
But
like
I'm like I was
I
like staring
honestly
like way off.
yeah, I honestly just
Just
thought you were like looking at a second screen or something and just looking
no,
at the video.
nope. Just empty air. Yeah, no, but like I met people and I had my political beliefs challenged, and as I came to like have a better understanding of myself, my slow work to trying to figure out who I was in my 20s led me on a very long journey where like, as a late in my late teens I started becoming way more empathetic. For a period of time in my like late teens, I was like writing for like the blog doesn't exist anymore, but I wrote for a conservative blog under a pseudonym that was passed on to me by another blogger before, like Dread Pirate Roberts, but like possibly racist and like not cool.
Awesome.
Like yeah, Dread Pirate Roberts if they wore a pointed white hood. I never made things about race. I always wanted to talk about statistics and data because that's where I felt like the proof was in the pudding. Until you find out later that like you have to like you can't just cherry pick data. You can't just like make it fit your narrative. Yeah, there was a lot of times where like my belief changed. I became very much I saw gay marriage as like an apolitical issue by the time I was 19 or 20. Like it wasn't like it shouldn't have been a political issue. It's about whether or not people deserve equal rights. Like that shouldn't be politics. That should be policy. Uh, anyway, like a lot of things changed. My view on gay marriage changed. My view on immigration changed as I became more and more empathetic towards the plight of these people because everybody wants to, especially conservatives, they're so focused on the border and they're not paying attention to the things below the border that are driving people to come here. And especially after the 2008 recession, um, caused a total economic collapse of Central American businesses that were reliant on American businesses putting their business over like down in Central America or using them as vendors, all sorts of things. Lumber yards all of a sudden didn't have anybody to ship their lumber to, et cetera, et cetera. And you see like the geopolitical issues on a larger scale, and you realize that being a small C conservative on doesn't really apply on a global scale. Like when you deal with bigger issues than what happens in your state or your country, then you shift and change. I'm getting way too in the weeds on this. I need to pull back. I keep on trying to pull myself back, and I keep on going forward anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And this must be what it's like to podcast with me.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. Sometimes,
Anyway,
sometimes I just kind of let you go just to see like if you'll catch it.
like I've caught it a couple of times, and I'm like, oh, okay, let's pull back, and it's like, but one more thing.
Yeah. 2020
circling
election started on
2020
Tuesday,
election.
or
Tuesday,
started a month ago,
Yeah.
but like the election
Yeah.
day was on
Oh.
Tuesday.
What I was saying, what I originally wanted to say was, so I'm deeply entrenched in politics my entire life.
Yeah.
I found a love of data, like digital audiences and media analysis. Like that's what I majored for my degree in. So I'm a data junkie. 538 is 100% my jam. Granted, it's polstering, or it's pollster like analytics, which means like pollster analytics is fairly reliable, but has a massive margin of error up to like 5 to 10% because some people don't like to tell you honestly how they voted.
Yeah.
Or how they're going to vote. Trump very famously had a very famous like the shy Trump voter or the shy Tory voter at the same time in Brexit was going on. Was this idea where it wasn't socially acceptable to say you were voting for Trump. So you said you weren't going to vote for Trump.
Yeah.
Which led to, especially with uneducated white males, was a massive wave of support that just nobody was expecting for him. People who previously had gone for Obama went for Trump all of a sudden in 2016. And pollsters are like, well, we've corrected it. Like, we're looking more closely. We're weighing this demographic more heavily. But, like, we also had a massive historic voter turnout where both candidates are both Donald J. Trump and President-elect Biden are two of the you could say this despite the fact that they're very considered quote unquote unpopular. They're two of the most popular candidates to ever run for president when it comes to votes.
They are, yeah. They received
they are.
more votes than any other candidate, both of them, than any other candidate in history.
We expected a larger voter turnout, but on that scale, that makes precedent look small by comparison. So like polstering was a bit off in like some key states. Like people expected Florida to go blue. Florida went decisively red.
Yeah, same with Texas.
Same with Texas.
I mean, it was the stuff I've grown up and just become used to. Like every election prior to this one, where it was like Arizona might go purple this time around, I was like, no, it's not. That is stepping on the rake because it had happened every other election of my life, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
The only time we'd ever gone blue in a presidential election was Clinton's second term, and that was just he was a wildly popular president, and so a whole bunch of people kind of got behind him.
He was running off of a 55% approval rating.
Yeah,
which is super high. And then the third thing about me is that I like to dig, and that's a bit more known about me, but when it comes to this sort of stuff, I'm obsessed. And so my obsession this last week has 100% been on the election.
Mm-hmm.
I've had like my feed on my phone and my laptop has been 100% just a combination of raw data from different, it's funny, I had 16 tabs open at one point with different key county election offices with their so I could get their raw numbers as soon as possible. I had the 538 blog going that was ongoing, and then I had the AP Decision Desk HQ, which is what Fox News was running with, and the CBS decision desk.
The Decision Desk HQ was what Fox was running with until Decision Desk called the election for Biden, and then like nobody was using Decision Desk for another day or so.
Yeah, no. When they called for Arizona and Fox News announced Arizona,
Yeah,
which to be fair, they did that very prematurely.
yeah,
There were still a lot of votes, and it came a lot closer on by yesterday. It came a lot closer to the wire by the time votes were tallied up and counted in. But I mean, Decision Desk called it right.
yeah.
They said it's
And
going Biden.
I think I had a long exchange with my mom about this the other day. Like I think yes, they called it early, but they also called it expecting that the election would probably go more in line with 2012 or 2018, which started out red and then blue votes came in over the next few days and turned a McSally victory into a cinema victory. And
Yeah.
so if our like the day of election and votes and stuff were looking blue, I think everybody was expecting, well, they're just going to become more blue then. I personally was expecting that and was expecting the gaps to widen without having gotten into the weeds at that point. And obviously we've seen that. Well, no, it was largely the day of mail-in ballots that were dropped off at polling stations, which because it was day of voting did tend to skew more Republican, and so the gap got closed. But yes, it did ultimately stay or is still with a
It's
Biden lead.
yeah, it's a decisive Biden victory for in Arizona. I think that people pollsters like new pollsters are probably like weirded out that because Arizona did not follow the trend of the red mirage that other states did, where day of voting and then went significantly to Biden in later days. Arizona, of course, has one of the broadest, most inclusive mail-in voting systems of any state in the union. We like to the point where like we are one of the few states where you don't have to have a reason to request a vote in like a mail-in ballot. You can just request one and
Yeah,
we'll send it to you.
yeah.
Arizona is
Like,
extremely confident in the voting security on top of that. And it was weird seeing Donald Trump on television say, "Don't send your vote in by mail," but then get mailers from the Trump campaign saying, "Hey, send in your early mail-in vote. Don't
yeah,
forget."
yeah. That the messaging
Yeah,
was very like on a national level did not match on a local level on that
no,
front, and
it,
and we saw that I think throughout the week where it was stop the vote in certain areas and then keep voting or keep counting the vote in areas like ours.
Arizona. Yeah,
And yeah,
I will say that like for other places they are looking at it being like an 80-20, 70-30 split for towards Biden's favor. In Arizona, it was a 50-6. It was a like for him to take Arizona back from Biden, it would have taken almost 60% of all mail-in ballots to go his way, and they didn't. They skewed more 60-40, 50-50. Depending on the county that was coming in. Maricopa actually went like fairly close, like into the 50s range towards for Trump, because like we said, this is just how Arizona is compared to other states.
yeah.
Republicans are used to voting by mail here, and most of them are out in Sun City. And gosh, if we could just like cut out Sun City and throw it into the sun itself, that'd be great. Um, too much money and too much money and too many old people living
I
in
mean,
Sun City.
yeah, there is an element of it that I'm curious, especially with everything going on, and I know that some people have been looking at doing this kind of analysis and stuff, and I just haven't seen any firm results. Is how many of those people actually made it out to Arizona or had Arizona listed as their residency for this election, or did they, are they still kind of back east? Because Arizona is, traditionally a very snowbird. We do have a large transient population that kind of comes in for 6 months of the year for our weather during the cooler months where they want to get out of the snow.
Mhm.
And usually, yeah, they would have started coming out here in September, October. I don't know if they I don't know what the historic trends are in terms of them registering Arizona as like their location to vote, or if they register
Mhm.
back in their prior states like Michigan's or your Northeast. But yeah, it was definitely something that given that travel is severely limited, and a lot of those people aren't making the trip out here or haven't made the trip out here. I was curious if that has played any kind of factor, but
Well, a
again,
lot of them
like
didn't make the trip back. Was the thing. A lot of them
yeah,
stayed.
I
Like,
guess
there's a
that's
large number of
yeah,
them
that's
that
true.
stayed since March. I will say it's interesting to note a lot of those people are conservatives from the Chicagoland area who, like, we have a massive Chicagoland transient population that comes
Hence
here.
why like Portillo's is
Yeah.
out here, and Lou Malnati's
Hmm.
even of all places
Yep.
we has chains out here.
Yep. We have a Mesa is very proud of its being the spring facility for the Cubs.
Yep.
We had them in one stadium, and then we built them a multi-million-dollar stadium uh, to like make them happy and make them stay. Which turned out great because it turned a otherwise undeveloped area of the Mesa Tempe border into a flourishing marketplace. So
Yeah, I remember
worked out.
going to Portillo's once a couple years ago, and just being like, "Wow, it is suddenly incredibly busy for like Saturday at like 11 a.m." And then just looking around and immediately like putting together, "Oh, these people are all in Cubs uniforms. Oh, spring training must be going on. Okay, now I know what time of year it is, or now I
Yep.
know that spring training, which is not a thing I pay attention to at all." And sure enough, yeah, like they all basically got on a bus, like Portillo's has buses that take people from that Portillo's to the stadium.
Hmm.
So like they park in the mall parking lot, not in the Portillo's parking lot, to because that's more limited parking. But yeah, they go park in the mall, and they go walk over and get like shuttled buses and chart and all go over to the games together. And yeah, it's a real kind of thing. I think you and I have like had
Yeah.
lunch there where we were there, and then we just hung out and visited and caught up throughout the entire game. So there, like we were there for the lunch rush, and then after the game, everybody coming back, or everybody
Yeah.
that did wasn't there in the morning, they came there in the afternoon for dinner and stuff. And just like I remember, yeah, having lunches with you there, just seeing that and being like, this is surreal a little bit.
I mean, it's like I like when you've lived here as long as we have, like it's surreal when you think about it from like an outsider's perspective, but like well, it's another thing to point out is that you've grown up in Scottsdale. I
Hmm.
grew up like I'm living in a house now that's not too far away from the house that I grew up in as a kid. The house I grew up in as a kid, like if I walked out of my front door and like walked down the street far enough, I could see the top of the old Cub Stadium. Like I lived right by Hohokam Park where the Cub Stadium was,
Hmm.
and so like it was super common. Like the fields around the old Cub Stadium were designated for recreational youth sports, and so I played sports. I played flag football, and yeah, I played flag football around like right around that entire because there's a bunch of grass area dedicated dedicated towards that. So
Yeah, admittedly,
yeah,
here
like
in
so. Mhm.
Scottsdale, we had like I grew up kind of knowing to avoid Old Town Scottsdale during spring training because we have like the stadium over by the Civic Center Library over there, which is like one of the few spring training games I ever took in was over at that stadium. I remember going there once. I don't remember who even was playing, but yeah, it has definitely been more of a, oh, spring training's here. Okay, these are the areas you avoid because traffic's going to be crazy there during the middle of the day.
Mhm. Yep. Anyway, so back to the original point. Donald Trump is not going to be president come January 20th.
Huzzah.
He has lost by such a significant margin that to unless he is able to come up with this miraculous proof of voter fraud, it's over for him. He knows it because he's just been out golfing depressed for the
Yeah,
last 2 days.
yeah, that was
Uh,
that I like. There are a lot of things that I will hopefully remember about yesterday. One of which being when the race got called by pretty much everybody, he was out golfing because that is of course a fitting end to where else would he be on any kind of like important occasion. And then, of course, the Four Seasons hotel landscaping like debacle that happened immediately afterwards.
yeah.
Just like
When they
how,
realized they didn't have right now the leading theory is that either somebody made a goof or they have hemorrhaged so much money that they couldn't. They originally were planning to book the Four Seasons for the press conference, and then found out they didn't have the money for it,
I
and
mean,
so they had to go
that
somewhere else.
hasn't stopped them. Like they still owe numerous cities money for their rallies and stuff like that. The I did see like earlier that I want to say 60% of the funds that they're raising right now to try and like prove voter fraud is just going to debt, is going to campaign debt. So
Yep, it's
hopefully those
fifty
cities.
percent because it's 50% because legally they're not allowed to go more than 50 to pay off campaign debt.
Yeah, I
So
get
they're
that. But since when has the Trump campaign ever like followed the law? The report I saw was saying 60% and recognizing that yeah,
yeah,
that's violating campaign laws.
it
But
is. But if they're paying back the cities that they owe money to, good, just do it.
yeah, exactly.
If people are still stupid enough to be giving money to the Trump campaign at this point, like that's a wash. Like that
Yeah,
is
I'm
like
fine with you
fool
paying
me.
Cave
Yeah,
Creek back for the rally they had there or whatever. Like let those cities actually get their money back.
yeah. Like it would have been like fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Like right now, you're being fooled far more than twice, but it's still following the twice policy of like shame on you. Like you
Yeah,
should have known better.
I mean
You should know
especially
better. This is
like it's almost funny because he's basically playing the he's using the Jill Stein playbook at this point because obviously after the 2016 election she raised a ton of money on the auspices of like, well, we're going to go ahead and demand a recount because it was so close for Hillary. Like this isn't for us, this is for Hillary, and obviously she raised way more money than she would have needed for any kind of recounts, and the fine print in all of her stuff was always like, hey, any money that goes above and beyond what we need is going to go to the Green Party or whatever.
yeah.
It was like, yeah, you huckster.
The Green Party is literally full of like the most radical ideologists and grifters and whatnot. It's the same thing with the Libertarian Party.
Yeah,
Libertarian Party is built the same way.
it.
Although I have to give a massive shout out to Joe Jurgensen. Joe Jurgensen, thank you so much. You helped provide key victories for the Biden campaign because you stole upwards of more than 1 to 2% of the votes that would have probably gone to Trump. Um, as somebody who foolishly voted third party in 2016 and immensely regrets it, seeing this happen and being like, yes,
Yeah,
this is what I love. You love to see it because now, and another thing also, like the coping that has been going on right now with the right has been very interesting. But on top of that, the like Trump supporters are like in just total denial, rabidly in denial. You have other conservatives who are just like, okay, we lost. Let's move on to the next administration, focusing on like what we're gonna do next. Like Saturday morning after the news, McConnell put out a letter immediately saying like we will address this. Um, Earlier today or late yesterday, Mitt Romney on CNN was just like looking forward to dealing with President-elect Biden. We're gonna stick to our values, yada yada yada, whatever. Like the party has moved on.
yeah.
The party has
As
moved on.
as they shamelessly always do, and that's and
Yeah.
people should not forget that they got right in line with Trumpism for 4 years because it benefited them. And in the 4 days there between Trump threatening to like claim this election without any actual mandate, Republicans were silent, like across the
Yep.
board, pretty much. Nobody came out
Yep.
and condemned his. They everybody just kind of was waiting to see where the leaves would fall.
Yep.
And
That
they
is.
are they should all be ashamed of that, and we should not let them
They're
forget that, in
cowards.
my opinion. Yeah, they are
They're cowards. They're
they are
absolutely.
feckless cowards.
They have no backbone. Just absolute feckless cowards. And the thing is, it's like I told you, I come from a conservative family. Like there are members of my family who knew that they would benefit from a Trump presidency and voted for Trump. I know that for a fact that that's exactly what they did. And the argument from them was always, well, it's like it can't like it's the same argument that like a lot of people used in 2016, which is like they're like what are you worried about? Like what's really going to affect? And it's always
How
came
much
down to
can
what's
one
going to.
person do, or something? Yeah, that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
how much are you worried? It's like it's not about that. It's that by being complicit with it, the Republicans were able to ram through more justices on more courts than any other 4-year administration in history.
Hmm.
Um,
And that's
yeah.
in large part because of the groundwork that McConnell had laid beforehand, where he was just holding
Hmm.
up any Trump appointment or any Obama appointments, and
Obama
that's
appointments.
something that like happens outside the purview of so many people that like I had a conversation with my mom a few weeks ago. She didn't realize that that was a thing that even could happen. Like she thought that Obama or that the president can only put people forward to the Supreme Court, and I was like, no, this is a thing that like so many of Obama's lower appointments, not just Merrick Garland, got held up because Mitch McConnell refused to confirm them in the Senate.
Yeah,
And so
because
when,
he knew that if they could win in 2016,
yeah,
he would have a full slate of like judge openings from the lowest courts to the highest court,
yeah,
and they could slot in the most conservative people they could find. Um,
lots of shameless
Granted, they
politics.
yeah, a lot of shameless politics. And the thing is that like to see people like Mitch McConnell and then before him Harry Reid from the Democrats erode the powers and like the principled like mechanisms of the Senate as a body that is meant to be like the Senate is meant to be above the political rabble that you would expect from like financial decisions that have to be made. That's why financial decisions are held. The coin purse of the union is held by the House for that reason, so that they can have those very detailed, scrappy arguments. The Senate is meant to to be the wizened people who make the decisions that are about fundamental foreign and domestic policy in regards to our ambassadors, our judges, are like these political appointees that have to be vetted out and interviewed and confirmed, like all these things that are supposed to be part of these things. And in order to make sure that one group doesn't railroad people through, there were mechanisms in place to prevent such measures. But over the course of the last, I think since like 2000, I mean, Harry Reid started doing it in 2000, like after like the Democrats came to power in '04 in the Senate. And there's just been a slow erosion of the the rules and limitations and precedents that existed in the Senate since the founding of our country to the point now where you can see something like this happen. So the thing about it is there used to be things like multiple quote unquote nuclear options that could prevent these things from happening, but they were dismantled by by Congress, by the Senate themselves. Like the Senate themselves defanged themselves and allowed the situations like we're seeing now to happen. And
Yeah.
it's frustrating to see like in order to gain a small victory, they'll shoot them like they'll saw off their own leg.
I always look back at like growing up, pork barrel politics was of course like a bad word kind of thing, but it led to compromise and yeah, it led to bloat and stuff, but like people worked across the aisle and there was a lot more bipartisanship. And then when that kind of got squashed, like it has become a well no, it's a winner take all. And so now the only time things get done are when one party holds all the cards basically.
And
And
it's really bad. It's so bad. Like it really started with the Tea Party politics of you have this ultra conservative, ultra nationalist side of the conservative side of America and the Republican Party that rose to prominence and has essentially firmly established themselves as the Freedom Caucus, which is made up by my local representative Andy Biggs, who's a piece of garbage who thinks that I'm a degenerate because I don't happen just to like women. There's he's an absolute garbage person who voted against the stimulus checks because they could possibly go to same-sex couples. Like he's a bigot.
speaking of garbage people, Guy Phillips went viral a couple months back by holding an anti-mask rally. He's a city of Scottsdale councilman, and he held an anti-mask rally that he kicked off in like the wake of all the George Floyd stuff. He kicked the meeting off by taking off his mask and being like, I can't breathe," and like fuck that guy. I'm very excited to say he did not get reelected into the city council.
Hey,
He got there were 6 candidates, top 3 basically got elected. He was 5th out of 6. So and I think he was the only incumbent running. So like he didn't even get that. So yeah, fuck Guy Phillips. I'm glad you lost. I hope you are laughed out of politics forever. And then on the not crappy side of things, just in the local side of politics, Dave Ortega has been elected mayor of Scottsdale here, and that's like cool and personal for me because I grew up playing like GoldenEye and Smash Brothers at his house. I was great friends with his son back
I was
in
about to say you should definitely preface that because
yes. Elementary school, middle school, high school. I was friends with his son Luke, and he lived like right across the street from our elementary school, Pueblo, and so we would just go to his house after school, and play games and stuff. And so yeah, I grew up playing video games at his house, and he's been like in the political scene for many years here in Scottsdale. I know he's run a lot of like elections that he didn't win, but he eventually became a city councilman, and then yeah, this time he finally had a successful bid for mayor. So shout out to Mayor Dave Ortega, like old friend. I haven't talked to him or seen him in many years, but it's still cool to like have that little personal connection with the mayor of Scottsdale, I guess.
Sorry, I'm looking up something here, and it's like I hate this because I'm trying to look up my local elections because like, oh, my mayor was running. I should see if he got reelected.
Yeah, it's like the localer things have been harder to find, I would say. But yeah, I dug into like AZ Central's kind of numbers to find some of that stuff. We also here in Arizona voted to approve recreational marijuana. Or legalize recreational marijuana, which is another one of those things that it has been surreal because I want to say like when I started voting in or being able to vote in 2004 would have been my first election, I think. Like I have since that time I have watched medicinal marijuana be voted down in Arizona. Then eventually it got it eventually did get accepted, legalized, and then and now recreational marijuana use has been legalized. So I have watched the tides turn on that just like issue here in the last 16 years, which is like just weirdly surreal. And then obviously, of course, it's exciting here in Arizona because for the first time ever, or for the first time since 1953, when Barry Goldwater was elected, Arizona has two Democratic senators, because we have, since 1953, we have either had one or none on the Democratic side of things. And then, yeah, all signs point to us staying on the Biden train on this one. So and that largely to one of the things you brought up and mentioned earlier, like the sub demographics of campaigns and stuff. Obviously, the Native American community came out overwhelmingly for Biden in this election here. So shout out to the Navajo Nation, as well as Latino voters in Arizona. By and large, seem to go Democrat on this, which is dedicated voter initiatives that I've seen friends of mine kind of been involved in for since Obama era, especially, but probably even before that. So much like kind of Stacey Abrams really got a lot of people registered and motivated to vote in the Georgia area, we have our own kind of like local initiatives that I think really drove a lot of the Democratic vote out this time, and that's exciting to see. And hopefully we continue seeing that in the years to come. And Martha McSally becomes the person responsible for losing both of the Arizona Senate seats to the Democrats. So shout out to Martha McSally. I hope you run for governor in 2022.
She might, dude. Oh man, no, we hate Martha McSally.
We do indeed.
Like, let me just go ahead and say this. Fuck Martha McSally. All my homies hate Martha McSally.
Yeah.
Like she is so. When she got appointed to the seat after McCain died, like people in Arizona were just like furious because, how dare you?
Yeah.
Our governor literally we voted
specifically
against you.
Didn't want this person in office, and you are defying the will of the people by yes, you appointed John Kyle there as a buffer, but we all saw right through that ploy. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, eventually they appointed McSally to just be right lockstep with Trump. Also, I mean, like a Trump victory means that Doug Ducey isn't going to get any kind of cabinet position, so screw that guy.
Nope. After he botched our
Or,
COVID
yeah, a
response
Biden
because he
victory,
was
I
trying
guess.
to,
Yeah,
yeah, he because he kowtowed towards Trump at every single moment of hesitation from our governor. Like we were a we were one of the places where we got hit by corona early on.
yeah.
We had some of the first cases in the United States. It was not a good thing. It's not a good look for Arizona. We have a lot of bad looks.
We were like for the what because there was that infographic thing that was going around on Twitter a little while ago that was basically like the day by day breakdown of like worst cases and worst hit states, and we were in the top 5 for over half of the video. And it was like going
Yeah.
back to like June 1st or something like that. And it was
And then
just like
Florida took it away
embarrassing.
from us, thank goodness.
Yeah. But we were still like, and that like, yeah, we were in the top spot for a lot of the video. Or no, yeah, that's what it was. We were in the top spot for half of the video, and we were in the top 5 for the entirety of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We never
we
left.
are one of the worst places that got hit in a per capita kind of basis, and it's infuriating because cases are on the rise, and I go out and people have not gone back to restricting things. I went out to grab grab my dinner a couple nights ago or something like that, and the patios were packed with people. I'm just like, this is not like people are just treating things like, yeah, they're not necessarily doing as much indoor dining. Although when I go and pick up Portillo's, half of that Portillo's is, filled with people that are just kind of sitting there eating their food. And I'm just like,
Hey, man,
I hope everything is, I hope they're not becoming like hotspots, but it's like, why not just restrict it to drive-in, or like why open the dine-in back up? Like why risk it?
no, the problem that you're going to run into for that is, and it's going to keep happening, is that. Give me 1 second. I have little hands knocking on my door.
Okay. Well, while you address the little hands knocking on your door, I will kind of do a quick little tangent over into, because we have a few other topics that we were going to touch on. And yeah, we'll probably get back into election stuff, but rather than make the whole episode election focused, one of the things I've been wanting to bring up and forgetting to bring up for the last few weeks that I'll just kind of touch on here as a topic of conversation is Immortals Fenyx Rising, which I sat down and played when Stadia had the demo, and then I just kind of kept forgetting to bring it up on the episodes of the show. But Immortals Fenyx Rising, the Zelda Breath of the Wild like that's coming out here in December from Ubisoft, where you play Fenyx, formerly Gods and Monsters, is the name of the game, was the name of the game. And yeah, it is very much clearly inspired by Breath of the Wild. You're flying around this large open world, collecting things. It's very much like go and explore. I enjoyed it infinitely more in the brief demo that I played of Immortals Fenyx Rising than Breath of the Wild, because I am long on record for hating like the weapon degradation of Breath of the Wild, and then just kind of recognizing that Breath of the Wild isn't doing anything new in video games. So much of that game is stuff
Hot takes.
yeah, is everything else. And so Immortals Fenyx Rising isn't doing anything new either, but Ubisoft has been making those kinds of games since Assassin's Creed kind of really, took the open world genre into go ahead and climb everywhere, go everywhere, do everything. So it's very much more like in their wheelhouse than it was, I think, in Nintendo's, because there was just so much open, empty space in the Breath of the Wild world. And there's, presumably going to be a lot of open, empty space here in Immortals too, but it's there was more interesting visuals to look at along the way. I really like the art style of the game, and the humor of the game as well. At least in the demo that I was playing, But seemingly just kind of throughout the game, they're going to be your kind of narrators. You have Zeus and Prometheus kind of as like a bickering, grumpy old men kind of couple, um, and they were infusing a ton of humor into the game. There was a moment where it's like, okay, you're gonna come up and do this, a boss fight, and they can't agree on what the boss you fought was, so they just kind of like start like saying things, and the enemy that's on screen kind of changes to whatever they're saying, and eventually you end up fighting like a series of like 5 chickens or something like that, and it just becomes very tongue in cheek, and they're having a lot of fun with the game. So I think that's what's going to set it apart from a Breath of the Wild, and the lack of rep and degradation in particular is another thing that I'm much more interested in playing Immortals: Fenyx Rising than I am in a full blown Breath of the Wild sequel when that eventually comes out. So just a quick little touchstone on that. The demo was brief, but it involved some combat stuff and some puzzle solving, and then just kind of like general world exploration. You go off the beaten path and find hidden things, and that was a lot of fun there. And it ran great on Stadia, as the tech often does. And
the tech is not the problem with Stadia whatsoever.
It's the lineup of like the 50 plus games that I think I've gotten in the last year, like all of which have either been games that I'm not interested in, or they're already years old games, or they're games I've played already. So, but I go and redeem them every time just in case I want to sit down and do some Stadia. But the specific thing of Stadia having those demos like available for everybody, that was, I think, a really cool use, and the thing that got me to boot up Stadia for the first time in months. So I would love to see more of that if more game companies kind of partner with them. Anyway, that's the Immortals: Fenyx Rising tangent. Back over to the election. So I think we've talked a lot about stuff. Do you have any kind of final thoughts on how you've been reacting to, or what kind of stuff you've been doing in the last week of kind of like just diving into election stuff, Cam?
Yeah, I slept so well yesterday and even partly today. I mentioned to you earlier, and then I stopped myself because I felt like it would be a good kind of like final note to land on for this. I didn't realize it until this morning that I have been, and I think a lot of us have been on a knife's edge for the last 4 days. Um,
I mean, certainly,
it has
yeah.
been, yeah, it has been precarious and it has been frustrating, but at the same time, it was reassuring to hear from President-elect Biden that this is the process. It is a long and frustrating and grinding process, but it is necessary for us to go through. And
And
his
it's
constant yeah.
I was gonna say it's worth pointing out that the reason it was as long as it was in many cases was because states weren't allowed to count early votes because the GOP leadership in those states restricted that, because
Yep.
seemingly the game plan was, well, let's have like election day stuff looking in our favor and then try and cut it off at the knees, and kind of take that process out. So like, and unfortunately that will always color people's perspective of this election,
Hmm.
in that like, oh, it was looking like Trump, and then Biden kind of came from behind, but it's like, no, all those votes were cast on the same day, or by
Yeah.
the end of the same day. It's just a matter of it took us that long to count those things. And if no election results had been posted or presented until every vote was counted, and you just saw suddenly like everything pop up, it'd be like, hey, Biden won decisively. And it's unfortunate that the way elections are covered in this manner, and especially this one with the outstanding and phenomenal circumstances surrounding it with COVID and everything, and the massive turnout, including massive mail-in turnout, just drastically changed how that election, how the election is perceived and seen, because the notion now in people's minds is like, oh, like he crawled back from the jaws of defeat to a victory, when it's like, no, those votes were always there, it just took us a while to actually get around to seeing them.
And as somebody who follows poll data, like, to be fair, poll, like, we knew there was going to be a massive margin of error because we like people who were smart enough to know that there was a massive margin of error because there's no way Biden was going to beat Trump in some states by like 10 points, like in battleground states. Like it just was not going to happen. It was going to be close. We knew it would be close, even though the data and the pollster data was saying it wouldn't be that close. It's interesting to understand that the margin of error is larger while you're getting results that you want, because you have to deal with the fact that, and this is a cold hard fact, Donald Trump had an overall approval rating of around 44% on election day.
Yeah. He never got
Nope.
over 50 in the entirety of his reign.
Did.
Like he has never been a popularly approved president.
There is a point where he was 52% approval rating.
Okay. I mean, like maybe in some polls. I guess because I remember seeing that as like a statistic of like, yeah, no, he never was like for a majority of Americans, he was never a popular president.
If you let me go ahead and pop up 538 has a great thing that I've been paying attention to for the last about 2 years, which is they've had a comprehensive breakdown of oh shoot, it's being hidden by all the election stuff. But they have a very comprehensive, like, detailed chart of not only his presidency, but also prior presidencies and how he stacked up to him in approval and disapproval rating.
Yeah. So I mean, like I'm seeing here that his like historical comparison for Trump, he like the highest that I'm seeing is 49%.
Let me go ahead and see. Oh, here we go. How popular is Donald
Oh,
Trump?
I guess maybe that's just for a month or something. Yeah,
For a
no.
month.
Yeah, no, it's saying his highest approval rating in these months was 49%. Admittedly, this is Wikipedia and it's looking specifically at the Gallup poll, but so that's what I guess what I was probably referring to.
Yeah, no. There's several polls like there's several polls where he polled over 50, but that's just typical polling. When you look at everything, it is different. No, there was a period of time during his presidency where
Anyway, historically an unpopular president. That's the point that I was trying to make.
I mean,
if he jumped out of that blip occasionally, fine, whatever. But
yeah,
like
no, he did.
historically, I think
Historically,
across the polls, probably the most unpopular president we've had, if not ever. Certainly in the last
he's
few decades.
A few decades for sure. He's certainly not the most unpopular president we've ever had. Truman at one point was so unpopular because he was pushing for the desegregation of the military that he literally fractured the Democratic Party in half and barely eked out a presidential win, due to historical low turnout from Republicans who thought it was a shoo-in for Dewey. So, yeah, no. At one point, Carter has been consistently lower than Trump was. There's historically speaking and statistically speaking, Donald Trump has eked out probably a low average, which is really because he has had a solid 30 to 35% guaranteed approval rating from his base.
Yeah.
That was just always going to vote for him. He is a weird candidate because he combined far right / far left conspiracy theorists who believe in the moon landing being fake and 9/11 being a government setup. Donald Trump is a historical massive believer in conspiracy theories.
Yeah, no, he appealed to the worst of us and benefited from the dumbest of us.
100%, just guaranteed. And then he also benefited from the most greedy of us.
Yes. And those are the only people that actually benefited from him. That's one of the other things that we voted for here in Arizona was an income tax increase on incomes over $250,000 for education, for salaries and stuff like that, and that very narrowly passed. I want to say it's 50% to 48% or something like that, but it passed. But I look at that, I'm like, I guarantee most of those 48% that voted against it aren't actually going to ever be financially impacted by it. The
Nope.
only like most of those people are going. The only change is going to be that they're in like their schools get more like better money or something like that. And so why is that a thing you would vote against? It's a that's I look at those kinds of things and like people are just like they or I mean we can go and look at the California the Uber
Yeah, the Uber one.
proposition that Uber and Lyft poured millions of dollars into disinformation on and seems to have passed,
Hundreds of
and it
millions.
worked. Yeah, hundreds of million, like 200+ million dollars,
Yep.
and people walked away saying no, they voted for it because they thought it was going to help, Uber drivers, and
Gig
it's like
workers.
nope,
Yep.
nope, you got bilked by the people that paid to get that vote for you. So, yeah, people are dumb, and a surprising number of people are dumb, and that's an unfortunate aspect of American politics is that like American politics would work best with informed voters, and most voters are not informed. And
Well,
I count myself
yeah.
among that. Like I try and do some extra research in a lot of these things, but I'm sure like when I'm voting when I vote for like the judges, the federal judges on the election ballot or whatever, I just as a principle, I don't go and do research onto every one of those judges or anything. I just say I don't personally believe in like judges not having term limits, so I just vote all of them no's. And that's an uninformed decision, absolutely, but that's a decision I'm trying to I make on that front because I'm not gonna sit here and research 40 different names and figure out, well, do I care about the cases that they tried and how they voted and stuff?
Sorry,
Are you
my
laughing
brother.
at me or are you
No, no, not at you, not at you. My brother-in-law just sent me a text of an image of like some of the darkest humor. Like, so here's the thing: there's been a lot of like humor thrown around the last 2 days that we've been kind of on edge about speaking about because we didn't want to call things too soon. When I walked out yesterday morning and told my sister or brother-in-law that it was over, uh, it was like, okay, cool, like what a great news. And then all of a sudden the jokes started flying loose
Mhm.
and just are out there. And my brother-in-law just sent me one, and it says, "Man, Trump could really use 241,098 senior voters right now."
Mhm. Yeah. That's I don't know if you saw our
Like
friend
that's some dark gallows humor, but yeah.
yeah, our friend Andrew Taylor, his partner Liza, went through and I believe she counted out like the she compared basically the death toll to if you look at like the swing states that were still like up in the air like Arizona and Pennsylvania and stuff. The difference in voting was pretty much 237,000 votes in both those numbers, and it's like obviously not all of the COVID people who have
No, of course
passed
not.
would have gone with
Especially
Trump,
because
but
especially because they greatly
yeah,
affected communities of color more than white
yeah,
communities. But yeah.
but it is a fascinating number to see kind of like plastered up there in comparison. But yeah, there's certainly, and I'm sure there will be a ton of analysis around that kind of stuff moving forward. But I think we've probably talked enough about the election.
Well, more than enough. Well,
Yeah.
more than enough.
I agree though. It was definitely a stressful series of days there, and I personally wasn't sleeping well, and so I was like at 3 a.m. I'd be sitting in a Google sheet and kind of comparing, voter results here in Arizona by county to see how are they going to stack up, and okay,
Yep.
if this is the
You did that
ratio.
too?
Yeah,
Awesome.
if this is the ratio and the estimated reporting is at 70%, well, what's the if that ratio sticks, what's the total vote count going to look like? And across the counties, does that mean Biden's lead is going to hold and all that stuff? Like, yeah, I just
Yeah.
because
So
my day job is in data analytics, so that's the kind of the
yeah, to our
in my
listeners and
wheelhouse.
watchers, if you guys were like, "Oh, I wonder what cool nerdy things they're going to talk about, so we don't have to focus about politics." Sorry,
Yeah,
we're two giant political nerds. Like this is.
just be glad Logan wasn't on this episode with us.
Oh yeah, because they would all be about.
Because then we'd
politics,
have
yeah.
a Texas perspective as well to throw into the mix. And yeah, I will certainly, yeah, we're about an hour into the episode already. I will definitely have kind of like, hey, this is the part of the show where we're talking about politics, identified. So hopefully they can skip over it. But
Yeah, when you put it on YouTube, make sure that you have it broken out, segmented by topic,
yeah,
and like isolate this topic as just
yep,
politics.
yep.
I'm hopeful though. I think I'll end it on that note. Is I'm hopeful.
Yeah,
I'm like I think that we were on a path where we didn't have a shot, and now I think we have a shot of doing the good that we need to do to keep us from sinking and being and like wrecking ourselves. So
it's definitely a step in the right direction. I I am relieved that at least in my circles and the feeds that I was seeing yesterday, and maybe this is way too echo chambery, and I'm getting way too much behind this, but the sentiment very much seemed this is a win for today, but there's still work to be done. Like this is not like as opposed to yay Biden's done, we can dust off our hands and walk away. Like the majority of people, myself included, seem to recognize that this is like a step in the right direction, but it is not the end of the journey. It is just kind of the beginning of a new one that to get kind of more equity and fairness and like restore so many of the things that Trump has dismantled in the last 4 years. Like this was the necessary step to get us back on the right track, but it is by no means the like last step of that journey. So yeah. So one of the other things you wanted to mention, just kind of touching on N7 Day, of course, was the other big news of yesterday in our circles.
it got so overshadowed. I feel bad for
of course. I don't.
Like this is the news.
Well, A, like people have known about it for months, but B, like they chose to go ahead and make their announcement on the day the days after an election. And yes, N7 Day was already established as a thing, but this was news that could have dropped at any other point. The fact that they wanted to hold it, it was a gamble, and in our spheres, it's still a gamble. It's going to pay off, and they're going to get a ton of people. But yeah, the long rumored Mass Effect remaster, trilogy remaster, has now been confirmed, coming out spring of 2021. We'll see when that actually hits. My biggest concern, given BioWare's recent track record, is that it's going to be rushed out just in time for the fiscal year, but it's going to have a bunch of issues and bugs and stuff, and it's going to need to be patched over the next few months, just like Andromeda, just
Probably.
like Anthem. So I'm hopeful that's not the case, and I'm hopeful it comes out and is, especially since it's not like a remake of the series, it is a remaster. It's up-res stuff, all that. Like part of me really looks at it, I'm like, buying this, like I get this being a console thing, but like how different is this going to be for anybody who already has those games on PC and can just like patch or like what's the reason of so it's like and they haven't given us
Origin
nearly
on
enough.
My computer.
I mean, you don't anymore. Like you can like those games are all on Steam now, so like you don't have to use Origin anymore.
Origin can still go die in a ditch. I hate Origin. I'm just gonna say this. Fuck Origin. All my homies hate Origin. There we go.
Yeah, no, I mean, like EA's one of the whole things of like EA's E3 conference this year, quote unquote E3 conference, was like, hey, pretty much everything's on Steam now. Like
that's right.
So yeah, they really been pushing for that, but yeah, that's one of the things that like since details on and specifics on the thing are a little light. I'm definitely that was kind of like. What's the like? Because they're releasing a PC version of this. I'm like, what's the like? What are you getting if you're a PC player that a patch wouldn't just get you? But I don't know. I look forward to hopping back into those games. I hope it hits at a time where I'm not overwhelmed with other stuff, which seems to always be the case. But admittedly, like this year has been a lot of like highs and lows where it's like, yes, there's a whole bunch of stuff I'm playing right now, but then there'll be like months where it's just like, okay, yeah, I'm just kind of not really playing anything, or I'm diving into some old things. I mean, like I spent the first couple months of this year playing The Witcher 3, so hopefully there will be time to go back into Shepard's journey and get into fun new kind of playthrough and look at that stuff. I never really did like full Renegade runs, so maybe I'll try and do that this time around.
I mostly did Renegade. Man,
I especially in 2 and 3, I love doing like the Renegade trigger options because I would just try and do like any of those that came up because those were always fun and certainly a more engaging way to have a scene play out. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I just, as I do in most games, I play the good guy. I don't really go too deep into unless I have to for like trophies or something like in the Infamous games. But yeah, it'd be fun to dive in and see aspects of that game that I haven't seen, or even just kind of like revisiting so many of those characters because I haven't played the original Mass Effect in probably 7 years or something like that. Definitely since the
I
PS3 era.
I I very much am looking forward to playing the. I'm very much looking forward to play Mass Effect 3 as a whole because I have not gone back to it since it came out originally 10 years ago. And I still remember like there's the whole like everybody remembers the retake Mass Effect thing, but the only reason that that happened is because the ending of Mass Effect 3 originally was so barren of any real substance of closure,
I mean, I
and
have always
it was
disagreed.
frustrating.
I've always disagreed with that sentiment. I think the ending it was fine. Yeah, I mean, it if you really want to boil it down short, it comes down to like the color swap choice or whatever. But the ending of Mass Effect 3 is the entire game. Like the entire game is a send off to those characters. As opposed to like, because there's no way that like one final solution, one final choice is going to satisfy every permutation of player story that like that game had. So for me, like the ending of that game is being on the ground and talking and getting your like saying your goodbyes to all the characters in like the little hologram thing, or and eventually the Citadel DLC is one of my favorite DLCs of anything, which sure a lot of people will point to and say that was BioWare trying to make good and appease the people who hated the original ending, but I think it was always in the cards that they were going to have one last send off with the crew. So
It's possible.
yeah, I
I
feel
would
like
say, and
I
yeah,
felt like the Mass Effect 3 controversy was just like entitled gamers being overblown and whiny. Whereas like most of the people who played Mass Effect 3 probably enjoyed it just fine. But we
yeah,
saw the
that's.
vocal, just as we've seen in political spheres and stuff, we saw vocal people kind of hijack the narrative.
I mean, yeah, for me especially, it was. I mean, I was on the subreddit for Mass Effect when Mass Effect 3 launched, and
Right, and that's where you're
um,
going to get those kinds of takes.
yeah, no, but what I will say is that I always felt that the Leviathan DLC and then the direct that's what right it was called, the director's cut of Mass Effect 3's ending sequence, where I felt like I honestly believe, and it's definitely been like unofficially confirmed by a lot of people, that the ending was bare bones as it was because they had to meet deadline. And so the director's cut is the full vision of what the team wanted to do for the ending. They were able, because of the pushback and the feedback from the fans, they were able to put out an ending in that director's cut that I felt was more than satisfying. Like
And
just
that like
so good, like so
that's
good, because
that
there's
always
just there's a
confused me
lot
because
of problems with the ending. There's
but
a
I
lot of
like
like functional issues with the ending.
I mean like I remember going back and I don't remember the director's cut being wildly different.
Oh, it's so different.
I
There's so much that's done to like uh, we don't have time in this podcast for me to go over this, Trevor.
I mean, I'll
But
go and
there's
look
a
at like the differences between them, but I don't remember that being a drastically different end game experience.
I mean, it fleshes out so much of like some weird. There were some in the original ending. There's some weird inconsistencies with like cutscene ending decisions not matching like the narrative of how that ending was going. There's a lot. There's a lot that goes into it. Uh, but I will end it on this: that I like the for me as a fan, the director's cut made good on the very lofty promises that were originally made. Like there was a lot of like, and it was marketing. It's just marketing. Um, but I really felt that the director's cut ending, especially with the addition of the Leviathan DLC that came out before it, giving like fleshing out far more about this like weird space kid Jesus that shows up at the end of the game, like making that feel whole and making it make not just make sense, but really actually makes it feel less jarring. And I just felt like they did such a great job of like putting that final note with the director's cut DLC that myself, who was a had massive issues with the original ending of Mass Effect 3, I was quieted and pacified and able to close the book on Mass Effect for me as a whole, complete, incredible trilogy. So
Well, you'll get your chance to revisit it here in the next few
I'm
months.
very excited. I'm
So there you
very
go.
very excited. Um,
Um,
if I allowed remasters to make a play on my list, you'd probably end up seeing it. But it's like expansions and other DLC stuff. I don't acknowledge unless it's a new release or a remake. I don't acknowledge it on my list.
mhm.
So
um, Another thing I want to dive into just briefly, because the only other thing that I really have to bring to the table this week is because I haven't been given how focused I was on election stuff. The only other like I haven't been playing too much and I haven't really been watching too much, but I did sit down and watch The Queen's Gambit on Netflix.
yeah, how
And
was
that
that?
that
That's
that
Shirley Theron, right?
no, this Queen's Gambit is Anya Taylor Joy. It
Oh,
is
that's right. Okay.
it's the chess miniseries show. It was really good. It definitely like kept the the stress of the election at bay. It
Wait,
is
wait. When you say the chess, like chess the musical?
no, not
Oh,
not ABBA chess. No, it is a story. It's based on a book, I guess. But the story follows Anya Taylor Joy's character, who she gets orphaned at a young age, ends up going into a girls' home in like the '60s or something like that, and she kind of keeps to herself, but she has she's kind of a math prodigy and stuff like that, and she meets the janitor of the this all girls school kind of thing, and he's just kind of playing chess with himself in the basement, and she kind of gets interested in and eventually he sits down and teaches her, and she just becomes she immediately picks it up, and kind of starts getting really into chess, and she given the time and the setting and stuff, she kind of gets addicted to like sedative pills that like the nurse of the girls' school kind of gives out to all the girls to kind of keep them like pacified, I guess. Um, and the chemistry that has, like, she ends up every night before she goes to bed, she can kind of see a chessboard on her ceiling, and she kind of plays games of chess with herself effectively through that. And so when she's sitting there, she can kind of visualize and
yes.
stuff on the
Yeah.
on the game. She very quickly becomes better than the janitor that she's playing against. He reaches out to like the head of the local chess club at the school or whatever, um, who becomes immediately impressed by her. He invites her to come play like everyone in her chess club in a simultaneous, and so like she's playing 12 other kids who are older because it's the high school or something, and she's like 9, and so she's playing against all of them. She cleans everybody's clock, doing that, and eventually she gets adopted, and kind of to try and start like getting money, she starts playing in chess tournaments, becomes well renowned, and just kind of like the story is basically her trying to become the best in the world, trying to become a grandmaster while dealing with all of like the personal life issues she's having to deal with. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really cool. It definitely, the series is, even like if you go through like the title names of the episodes, it is structured in a way to like, okay, the opening episodes are the beginning, you know putting the pieces on the board, kind of moving things into place. Then you have like the mid game, and then you get to the end game of the story. So it's kind of structured in a game as a game of chess. But one of the things I was thinking of, because the the big boss that she's trying to overcome is a Russian from the Soviet Union kind of thing, given that
Of course.
the thing takes place in like the 60s and 70s and stuff.
I mean, that's when chess was huge in the
Exactly.
U.S.
And yeah, I mean,
Like
she's
that's
like,
Bobby Fischer.
she becomes a little bit of a celebrity because she's out there dominating chess in a world of men kind of thing. Um, and yeah, so her big bad is she the culmination of the series is going to take her to the Soviet Union to play against the grandmasters out there, um, and I at some point sitting through it, I was like, I've never watched the Rocky movies, but as somebody who's never watched the Rocky movies, this feels like the Rocky movies, but in chess, especially like Rocky
Yeah.
4, where it's like, okay, this is clearly like she's, being the American and, you have to, punch out the Soviet
Trevor?
Union kind of thing. Yeah.
Trevor.
Yeah.
This is an anime.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yes.
This is an anime, Trevor.
Yeah.
You've described to me an anime.
Yeah. I mean, very much. It like somebody else I saw describing it as like it's almost like a superhero story in that like chess is her superpower, and she kind of has to develop it, and then of course you're going to have your pitfalls and overcome challenges. I mean, it's not just like anime. It is like just basic storytelling structure kind of thing. But yeah, it was a really good series. Anya Taylor-Joy in particular is great. And it's
I love her. She's fantastic.
yeah, she's been great in everything I've seen her do, and this just kind of adds to the pile of that. It is, I mean,
If for anybody who doesn't know who she is, please watch Thoroughbreds. Not seeing anything else that she's in, watch Thoroughbreds. It's a film that she's in, and that is a phenomenally fantastic film that is just chef's kiss perfect. It's so good. And it's full of young, unknown actors or actresses. It's led by these two girls who
That was
are
the
just
one-
fantastic.
was it Anton Yelchin, right? No.
Yep.
Yeah,
Anton Yelchin.
that was one of
It's
that
his
was
last
his
film.
that came out like a couple years after he passed away. Yeah.
Mhm.
I've
So he
not
does principal
watched that one
filming,
myself,
and
but
yeah, it's so good to see somebody of Anton Yelchin's caliber of acting, which is sad because he was tragically died in a very very like
freak accident.
simple freak accident. Gosh, it's sad just thinking about it. He had so much still to do as an actor. To see that cut short was like in such a almost bonkers way. Like if I put that scene of like where he died in a movie, you would think it's a comedy.
Yeah.
Because it's so outlandish.
Yeah, I remember.
But it happens.
I remember
it's
being
an everyday accident.
Yeah, I remember being in LA when I saw it, because for those that don't know, he basically got crushed by his own car when it like reversed into a gate. I think he was like working on the car or something like that, and like the parking brake came loose and just backed down his driveway and pincered him up against his own gate. Yeah, tragic thing. And I remember being in LA, like reading or hearing about it on like stories when it happened, because I was out there for something. I was visiting friends or something, and just being like, this is surreal. But yeah, so I have not seen Thoroughbreds, but it's I will add it to the list of things, because I've seen her. I mean, probably the first thing I saw her in was Split, which she was phenomenal in that.
She's the main girl from The Witch. That's the first thing I saw her in.
Okay, I've not seen that either.
The Witch is fantastic.
But yeah, like Split and Emma are the two big things I've really seen her in.
True
and
caution
nowadays.
warning: if you like, The Witch is a really fucked up movie.
I mean, that's probably why I haven't bothered to go see it. Like it took Glass coming out for me to even see Split. And the only reason I went and
so
did
good,
that, I went to at our local Alamo. They did a trilogy of like that saga of movies. So I sat down and watched all three of them.
Three fantastic.
As somebody who had liked Unbreakable kind of thing, but hadn't really had not really followed Shyamalan's career after that. Split, it was just like I was like, oh, I'll go check this out. I hope it's not going to be too much of a horror thing for me. And it was fine. But yeah, like I tend to avoid those kinds of things. Yeah, I mean, well, you don't necessarily know it's a supervillain film until the end of the film.
But you also don't realize that Unbreakable's a superhero movie till like a quarter of the way through the film.
Yeah.
Shyamalan's such like when Shyamalan is on his game and not up his own ass, he's such a good director.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was those are the things I have seen Anya Taylor-Joy and yeah, Emma being like one of the last movies I saw in theaters this year. She was great in that as well. So yeah, this is just another great role for her. It's a very it is a very it's another deliberately paced kind of thing. Like we touched on, I think in our when we talked about The Mandalorian recently on that D Plus show. So there are like a lot of slow moments, like sitting through and realizing I had only watched like the first couple episodes. I was like, I feel like I sat through like a 2-hour movie, and it's like 45-minute episodes, I want to say, or something like that. But yeah, it definitely like it feels its length, but not in a bad way, I would say. So I enjoyed it, and I knocked it out. Yeah, in a few days of just kind of like trying to not doom scroll, taking breaks from that. So definitely check out Queen's Gambit on Netflix if you're interested in games of chess and the psychological drama around that and kind of those characters.
There was no escape for me.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm a substitute teacher, and so I was like, I usually have a strong rule about cell phones in my class, and I follow that rule. Except like my students were like, Mr. Abbott, you gave us very specific instructions about cell phones, but you like one of the kids was like, so like if you have a problem with cell phones, why is yours out? And I looked at him and I said, that's a great question. You are right. Get back to work. I got to do it was like this is a time of every 4 years I kind of get bunker crazy, where even though I'm out and about in the world, I might as well be in a bunker.
Yeah.
Because I'm reading through everything. So I'm curious. I have a lot of stuff that that I'm excited to get into as far as media wise. Mandalorian season 2. I want to start on Destiny's 2's Beyond Light expansion comes out this week. Lots of stuff I'm really stoked for to be a preamble towards in December Cyberpunk.
Yeah,
that gets delayed.
I mean, I've gotten the shipping confirmations on my Xbox Series X is showing up on Tuesday, and then my PS5 is showing up on Thursday. So I look forward to diving into Astrobot's Playroom. Is it Astro's Playroom? And Spider-Man Miles Morales, Bugsnax, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is coming out. Yeah, sorry.
A man's coming over tomorrow to my house to fix my PC.
Cool.
So hopefully that means that that'll be great, because if I can get this thing up and running, then I can not have to worry about getting an Xbox, because the Microsoft ecosystem will have on PC.
Yep.
And then I will just have to worry about getting a PS5, which I'm not really too concerned about until Final Fantasy 16 or when the Cyberpunk patch comes out. So I'm excited. I'm really stoked.
I mean, for me, it's largely like I'm excited for the load time to decrease. Honestly, I don't play Avengers, Trevor, so it doesn't matter to me. Sure. I'm not playing Avengers anymore right now at the moment anyway either. But just diving into all those games.
Should we mention Avengers news?
I mean that dives into that news you care about kind of stuff. That's not really this. I mean, I saw that apparently sales are not doing well, and Square Enix took a big old hit on it, but that doesn't surprise me either. So, anyway, any other your big topics that you wanted to bring to the table? You mentioned Jujutsu Kaisen.
Jujutsu Kaisen. Okay. That's actually the one thing that I've let pull me away, actually. So Jujutsu Kaisen is a Japanese series of comics, manga. It's published in Shonen Jump. It's probably one of the best titles to come out in the last 5-6 years. It is extremely good, and it recently got its anime adaptation a couple of weeks ago started. They just had episode 5 on Thursday come out. It's extremely good. I'm not gonna come here and tell you, it's it's like the new next My Hero Academia. No, that's not what this is. This is Jujutsu Kaisen is a very cool, dark, toned show with some serious material about essentially it's about a technical high school in Tokyo that specializes in producing exorcists. And these exorcists use different techniques and stuff. And it stars a very, like, how do I put this? It stars a himbo named Itadori, who is a wonderful, like, peach pink colored haired, just absolute goober of a young himbo, and he is fantastic, and I love him. And it's just filled with like really great characters. It does a lot of really wonderful storytelling in the manga, and they are really doing well. They're not rushing anything like some other recent anime adaptations of really good, deliberately paced manga not being translated into anime well. So
It's a very striking thumbnail on their like their official trailer and stuff. Where I'm like, okay, yeah, I see that, and that is not a thing I want to watch.
what is the
It's
thumbnail?
I'm guessing it's your main character, but he's like got a very manic, crazed look. Um,
Ooh,
yeah,
that might be.
it
So he
it
he
it
eats
it
a
looks like
yeah.
Ryuk from like it looks like a more crazy Ryuk, but like a little bit more humanized as opposed to Ryuk from Death Note.
I see. So what
He's
you're
just
dealing
staring
with
at the
there,
camera, like he's staring at the camera, like, and it's just like,
that's
oh,
probably
that is uncomfortable.
Sukuna. So Sukuna. So the story starts off with Itadori as a regular high school student who's exposed to the exorcists and cursed, like curses, um, by way of a finger, like a human finger, is found in a little shrine by his school. And over the course of, I won't like spoil anything for anybody who wants to get into it, but the character that you're seeing is a character known as Sakuna, who is the king of curses. He is essentially a cursed being who uh, wreaked havoc in the period of time that he lived in, um, and was just like an absolute monstrosity to try to take care of. And they couldn't destroy him entirely, so they sealed his essence into, like, he was too powerful of a curse to destroy, so they had to seal his essence in 20 fingers. Um, he had 20 fingers because he had 4 arms. Uh, and Itadori, through unconventional measures, gets possessed by one of the fingers, and it's his entire story of being introduced into this world as a very like a very notable person before he gets cursed, to the point where it's a fun show. It's a fun show. Um, there's some really great lighthearted moments that are paralleled by some really like twisted moments, but I will also say that it has some of the best like monster designs that I've seen in years from a show or from a property. It has some of like the funnest, like the ending to that anime, the ending track is phenomenal, and just it's so good. Like it's so good. Um, it's been like the one thing that's been able to pull me away from the election was the new episode of Jujutsu Kaisen. So I wanted to give it a shout out. If you haven't checked it out, Crunchyroll, I think is the one. Yeah, Crunchyroll's putting it out, so check it out. It's super good. Um, but yeah,
Cool,
that's like my recommendation, my cool recommendation this week.
cool. Did you want to touch briefly on your time with Hollow Knight and Destiny 2, or do you want to kick that to
Oh, I
a
forgot
future
about.
episode?
I'm not too into Hollow Knight. I'm like Hollow Knight seems super cool. I will say that the how do I put this? The jumping mechanics feel like I know this game is like a 2016 2017 game. Um, the jumping mechanics in that game certainly feel that way, platforming wise. Like it's not as because of there's a lot of deliberate uh, intention with the jumping design in that game for platforming that is a bit odd by even like 4 years into like to the modern point now. But I will say that it is a very like design wise is a very beautiful game that I am very much into. Um, Especially since I've unlocked a couple buildings up top in the hub town, and I like the idea of exploring almost like an archaeologist this fallen society, this fallen kingdom, and kind of like the remnants of what's left there. It's very, very cool. It's very macabre. I will say it's very macabre, and I like that a lot. I'm not too into it though to really give too much information about it. And then Destiny 2 is just trying to get back into the Destiny 2 grind, in preparation for, uh, you know, Beyond Light that's
Yeah.
coming out on Tuesday. So
Yeah. There was.
also massive shout out to community manager Deej, who recently left Bungie.
Yeah. I saw
It's
CJ's
been
leaving too.
yeah.
Um,
I think a lot like there's a lot of people who've I think just been kind of like this is their last run, um, at Bungie, because
hmm.
I think that COVID has changed a lot of stuff
Hmm.
and changed a lot of things, and I'm sure that that has a lot to do with it as well.
Yeah.
The fact that there's such a key group of people leaving makes me think that there is something up and coming that we will probably be seeing from them as a group in the future,
Hmm. Um,
or we'll see them all at really good positions in other companies.
I mean, certainly that's the hope. Just briefly on touching on both those things. Hollow Knight, I'd heard such great things about, it, and so many people kind of like singing its praises that I picked it up on sale. I don't know, a couple years ago, something like that. Like I don't know, maybe last year, and I played it for like 15 minutes. I was like, this is not a game for me, because it's what like it felt immediately like a mix of roguelike and a Soulsborne, and I was like, nope, that's two things that just do not strike my fancy. So
That's fair. That's totally fair. That is 100% the case.
yeah,
Well,
so
no, Rogue. I wouldn't. I would say it's like a. It is a Souls-born platforming game for sure.
I
I
mean,
don't know if
it
because it's
doesn't
Metroid.
it?
It's not roguelike. It's Metroidvania, is what it
Okay.
is.
I thought
It's
it.
Metro.
I
It's
thought
very
it's.
Metroid.
I thought it did change up each time, though, like each death or
No,
something. No. Okay.
because you literally are given like cartographer stuff to map out your
Okay.
routes and stuff, and when you die and you go back, the routes are the same. So
Okay. And then Destiny 2. I obviously we've touched on many a time. I'm not hopping back into that, but I did see a a PC Gamer article out there that basically was like the Destiny 2 I know is about to just be gone forever, and that's very much where I've kind of been feeling with everything they're vaulting in it or in preparation for Beyond Light. I'm just like, yeah, I don't know, like once Beyond Light launches, I would say probably 95 of the Destiny I played when I played it is going to be gone. And that's
yeah,
just a very weird and surreal kind of thing. Like that game that I spent 300 hours in is just going to not be there anymore, going to be not accessible. And
did
that's
you
odd to me.
ever make it to? Trying to think, what was the next major expansion?
The one I hopped back in for was when the garden thing came, right? I don't
Yeah,
remember
that's
what,
right.
the ethereal garden or whatever. I came to that like a couple weeks late, and by then everybody had already kind of moved on, or like everybody had already like gotten to top level or whatever, and I didn't have anybody to play with basically. So I was like, well, nope, this is like I stuck around with it for a couple weeks, but yeah, I didn't do that raid or any of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, that was like that's the last I'd really spent any time with it. And I'm just like, well, yeah, okay, that is a game that, yeah, in this weird live service world, just will no longer exist here in a week. And that's a weird thing to think about. As somebody who never got into like MMOs or anything like that, where I'm sure that's much more commonplace. Um,
I no, even then it's not.
no,
Like there's no, unless you're talking about a game like maybe World of Warcraft. I don't know how they've dealt with no, because even then like the original versions I think of the expansion areas have pre-existed.
hmm,
So I don't know.
yeah.
I honestly don't know. I don't think this is ever something that's really been done before.
Or like I guess
Um,
because I'm also thinking of like the games that are or were there but just aren't online anymore, like Asheron's Call and
oh,
stuff like that, or
Asheron's
or
Call,
Paragon, like those kinds of games
Pokemon
that like
Online,
people, yeah,
EverQuest.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, like something like WoW, yeah, obviously WoW sticks around and has survived the ages, but like could I still right now go and play like the Old Republic or something like that, one of those,
Mhm.
okay. Huh, okay. Um, Speaking of, I joked I'm probably going to boot up my Knights of the Old Republic as like the first game I play on my Series X here this week, just to hop into that old.
A great game to do.
Yeah,
I would I always say you should probably play that on PC because you can mod it pretty well, so it's not as like it's not an impressive modifications that you can do to that game,
Yeah.
just because the structure of that game would not allow it.
Yeah.
But
But then I'd
a
have to
lot of stuff
be
to do.
then I'd have to be a PC nerd, and I'm not there yet. I have a
Oh,
a
you're
souped
not
up
there yet.
I have a souped up PC and everything for the website and all these podcasts and everything. But I did play
You're not there yet.
I did play
You're
Flight
not there
Simulator,
yet.
so I did.
Yeah, dude. Oh my gosh, you played Flight Simulator.
Yeah.
Trevor.
But that was
You are.
that was the
That
exception
is,
to the rule.
you're there.
I'm not. I'm
There's
still.
no
I'm still
exception.
so much more predominantly a console player, and will continue to be. But
You are neck deep in the PC ecosystem, and you're just like, but my head's above it. My head's above it, so I can still breathe fresh console air.
exactly, we'll see. I don't know. Maybe if I end up starting to do streams, maybe I'll finally take the opportunity to go back and play some Disco Elysium or something like that. Those PC only experiences that I can't get right now.
Disco Elysium's so good.
Yeah. Well, I think that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you, Cam, for joining me to talk about the election and all sorts of other, light distractions we had around the election, but predominantly the election. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give a shout out to, Cam?
Yeah, I do. Shout out to the Kind of Funny crew for putting on an Extra Life that was extremely entertaining. Just yesterday they did their regular yearly Extra Life. It's because it's COVID, everybody was in their homes, but they were still able to put on a solid 12 plus hours of really entertaining product to raise more money than they've ever raised before. They absolutely smashed their record, so shout out to them.
Yep.
Shout out to
And
Rick
we'll
Miller
continue
for
to do
now-
so as more of us sit down and play. Like I'm still planning on
Yeah.
doing some kind of stream, either for myself or for that nerdy, do an extra live stream between now and the end of the year. So, we'll continue raising money
same
as
here.
we can.
Yeah, I think that like my whole thing is I was planning on spending quarantine and stuff, doing a lot more streaming, but PC woes, of course, being what they were for me.
Yeah.
Um,
See, if you
point out where
played
I'm
if you
literally-
played console, it wouldn't be a problem.
it would still be a problem because what am I streaming from, man?
I mean, the PS4.
Gross, gross.
I mean,
Like,
you would be able
no.
to stream from the PS4 better than you can stream from your PC right now. That's all I'm saying.
I don't like that. I don't like that at all. Anyway, but I will give a massive shout out to them for like absolutely killing it. Tim Geddes sacrificing all the hair above his neck
Yep.
for those big beautiful kids. Tim Diesel, Greg Miller, who's now a mustached man, who has offered to give anybody who wants one at PAX East 2021 a free mustache ride. I have my voucher. I am ready to go.
Yeah, I saw you thirsting about that on online.
Listen, it wasn't a thirst so much as like
It was a
there's just-
thirst. It was a thirst.
it was a fake thirst. I don't
Yeah.
I don't actually thirst for Greg Miller because I look at Greg Miller and I see a hero. I see my idol.
Okay.
There's nothing sexual about that. He belongs to Jen Miller.
Yeah.
And there's nobody else that he belongs to.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I caught a lot of their stream. I was kind of in and out throughout the day. But yeah, like I saw their Among Us. I saw his very impassioned speech kind of in the lead up to the Biden watch along, the victory speech watch along that they did. Rest in peace. Their hopes of playing Warzone with Snowbike Mike. I felt bad for
Or
him.
Snowbike Mike.
Yeah,
Or
kinda
Snowbike Mike.
kept getting kicked down the line. But yeah, like they kicked it off with like everybody's golf, and that was like a fun throwback, little bit of their stream. So yeah, shout out to Kind of Funny indeed. You follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. I will give a shout out to Cam and I sat down for last week's That D Plus show to talk about The Mandalorian Season 1. So if you're catching up on Season 2 stuff, you can go and enjoy us gushing about the child, Baby Yoda, and all that fun stuff on that episode. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site on Twitter, or check out thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. I have something that I wrote up. I don't know necessarily when it'll get edited and published to the site, but I do have a feature coming up on Spiritfarer, hopefully sometime in this coming week. So keep an eye out for that as well. If you liked what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, maybe even consider supporting us over on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, where every patron gets early access to a monthly bonus episode of this very show. This month's early access episode is Logan and I sitting down and talking about a lot of the best and worst TV series finales. So you can go check that out if you support us at $1 or above on Patreon. As always, thank you for listening. Stay nerdy and be good to each other.